Hi, I'm Natasha Lobban from A Plus News. I'm here at Beef in Rockhampton with DJ from NFF. Welcome to our studio.
Thank you.
Now, DJ, today you have not been able to go anywhere without seeing a politician. They are absolutely everywhere, more pollies than cows almost. Can you just explain to us if you've had a chance to talk to many and how that's gone?
Look, I've got to agree, they've been pretty thick on the ground and most colours are here, so it's been an opportunity to discuss some of the policies that the national farmers have and some of the issues that the broader agriculture industry are facing at this time, noting that there's, like everywhere, some good patches and some other areas that are doing it quite tough.
Yeah, and did you get a chance to talk with Albo?
Yeah, we had an opportunity to grab the Prime Minister and the Agriculture Minister together to discuss some of the key issues for us at the moment, and that is obviously the banning of live export out of Western Australia and the fact that it's undermining the confidence of farmers to both invest in their flocks going forward, and the consequence of that is both underneath these dry conditions not having any value and not seeing any opportunity to see any value that they're going out and shooting their sheep eventually.
And how long did you get with the Prime Minister and Minister?
I reckon it's been about 7 minutes in total, but we were promised more of a longer hearing with the Prime Minister next time we had mutual times in Canberra, noting that when you're on the road, everybody was wanting a piece of the Prime Minister, but we did have once again a chance to raise those key issues around the sheep exports, the dry conditions in Western Australia and in Tasmania, and the effect it's having on farmers. And then obviously the biosecurity itself is being one of the big concerns that we've been definitely pushing with both on the crossbencher side of things, so that they're aware of the issues, but also going loud to the farming community to make sure that they understand that we want to have action and we need their support to make some light noise about this.
So the Senate committee should report the end of this week and voting on the biosecurity tax in the Senate next week. What was your response from the Prime Minister and the Minister for Agriculture today about your feelings on the tax and where they're at? Sorry, the levy, where they're at? Essentially,
well, it can be a levy or a tax, but at the end of the day, the farming community has to pay, is being asked to pay, and we're quite simply saying that all of agriculture in a collective voice has said no. When it's going to consolidated revenue, when we already contribute through the levies that we pay, when we already have the responsibility for any mop-up efforts that an incursion may have, we believe that we're already contributing. We are fully supportive to have a better funded biosecurity system for the long term. We're committed to playing our part, but what we've heard from all the farming sector and from even some of the key members of the opposition is that they support our stance that this is bad news, let alone the universities we've spoken to, the economists that we've spoken to, all saying that it should be on the risk makers and they are the importers, and that's where the levy should be focused.
The report's due sort of this week, and then next week it goes to the Senate. What are you doing in this last week? Are you confident that it will be stopped?
Well, what we're asking people is to, we're launching on Twitter the hashtag called Scrap the Tax, and we're just asking people to send a tweet to their local politician and then key decision makers within Cabinet, both the Prime Minister and the Agriculture Minister, to let their voice be heard that they do not support being levied or taxed more than what's necessary, and the fact that the importers, the risk makers, should take the responsibility of paying. And quite simply, the more people we can get behind this and have their voice heard, it gives both evidence, the fact that we already know it's across agriculture that it's not supported, but let's place it right at their doorstep by attacking their social media threads, because we do know that politicians, they watch Sky News and they do look at their Twitter handle.
So the supermarket inquiry has come out this afternoon. Do you have any comments on that?
So we've seen a lot of recommendations come out of the inquiry that we fully support. Obviously, making the code mandatory was the easiest one and the lowest hanging fruit out of that conversation. But also they spoke about making sure the penalties are adequate enough to really deter anybody from stepping outside of those. And we're fully supportive of that as well. We believe there should be a big stick in that shed. The conversation around divestiture is also raised in the recommendations, and for us, we're still agnostic to what should that should look like as the agricultural representative community. We want to make sure that there's accountability and also consequences in place, and significant consequences. But that last frontier of should there be divestiture is a conversation we're still having. But I think when you talk about things like land banking, which we've seen in this inquiry, which is a bit of surprise to us, that there are retailers buying up land that would be potentially a good site to go in competition for them, is held by the original retailer for blocking anyone else getting a foothold, is something that we didn't realise was occurring, and in fact we believe stifles competition. So if divestiture or if another mechanism means that we can get more competition in that retail space, and that we can get that transparency for farmers so that they get a better deal and consumers get more choice and hopefully more pressure by that competition, that can only be a good thing.
Were there any recommendations, or any one key recommendation that would benefit farmers in your view, that would be the biggest benefit?
Once again, to be searching for one silver bullet to say this has solved the situation is always tricky. We understand that this is a layering up of issues across the supply chain. We are dealing with the retail end at the moment. We believe that the whole supply chain should be looked at if you're wanting efficiencies, let alone things as basic as getting access to farms via roads, and even telecommunications cause great costs on agriculture. And if you want to have a meaningful efficiency gain that then can trickle down through the supply chains to reduce costs, they also need to be looked at. But coming back to the inquiry, we're very supportive of the mandatory code. We understand that's only a very small segment of farmers that it affects, but nonetheless, that's the right thing to do. Once again, that accountability and transparency are the other two things we've been calling for. We see that in some of the recommendations, therefore we're supporting it. But there's no silver bullet to this. There's actually just a layering up and ensuring farmers are protected is the ultimate aim.
The government has today announced a $512 million drought package today. Is that something you had been campaigning for, or was that a surprise for you?
Well, essentially, to our understanding, these funds are basically the same money that was already available, just with a little bit more topping up. But it's the power now that is invested into the drought committee itself to distribute those funds, and no longer in the responsibility of the bureaucracies, the major difference that we understand has occurred. That, and also the review into the investment to date, is something that's really important, because two things. We want to make sure that at the end of this first 5-year period that investment of $500 million has been shifted the dial and has affected and changed some of the decision making within agriculture. But then also moving forward, we believe that some of the climate change mitigation strategies should be included into this drought fund, because it's not just droughts, it's also the severity of the weather events that we're having to try to prepare for. And if we can make sure that better information is put out there for farmers to build resilience in their business, have good strategies in place and make those better decisions for the longer term of their business, that's actually what this is designed to do. We're not sure how much that's occurred, but we're supportive of, once again, the review and the continued investment.
The Australian Beef Sustainability Network also announced their update and shared that with us today. There's been, it's very extensive, a lot of amazing things in there. Have you had a chance to review that and what it says essentially, and what it means for the industry going forward? Unfortunately,
I wasn't at today's launch. However, I have been to previous the framework launches. I was there last year. For us, it is about making sure that we continually adopt best practice and also understand where we sit within the sustainability measurements. So anytime that we have the discussions around sustainability, there's two parts to it. First of all, it is the number and what we've done, but secondly, it's the conversation we can have to our markets, to our consumers outside of Australia, that we are complying with and actually exceeding in some areas the expectations of both the mitigation and also the ability for us to decarbonise our economy. Now, in this conversation, it's not necessarily about making money out of these schemes. It's about having evidence to say that we are the leading edge producers when we talk about biodiversity and also sustainability, and this is the language we need to use. For the average farmer, it can be a bit daunting, but as an industry, this is what we need to do to achieve market access, and a lot of those markets can afford to pay more for our food, and we do need to achieve that penetration of those markets, because quite frankly, we can't compete on price with the average commodity. We have to make sure that we're selling the value of our product, and that's why we need sustainability frameworks.
Yeah, fantastic. One last question, a nice easy one. We're at Beef here in Rockhampton today. I don't know about you, we're both from Victoria. I'm seeing plenty of people from our home state as well. So everyone, you know, beef farmers from across Australia are all here today. The industry's been doing it a bit tough in places. How important is it that we all get together at events like this?
So 3 things I always say at the end of any of the meetings I go to with farmers is, first of all, look after yourself. Mental health is a huge thing in agriculture, and we unfortunately have some of the highest suicide rates of any industry. So coming to events like this, meeting people, meeting old friends, and even just having conversations about what you're doing is super important for your well-being, as well as checking on your mates. Secondly is always about OH&S. Make sure you're doing anything you can to protect yourself, your family, your workers, and anybody who comes onto your farm. So being able to see the latest technology here, making sure that you've got the ability to know where trends are in both machinery and the application of different techniques on farm is super important, and that goes back to that OH&S. But then finally, it's about knowing your number. It's about understanding where we sit within the carbon cycle, knowing what you do as a producer and what you can do to either make yourself more efficient and more profitable. And then a lot of times, that actually benefits the amount of carbon footprint that we have by turning off livestock quicker, by making sure we're getting targeted inputs. These are the things that we can do as an industry that actually benefits the whole community without costing us anything. So those are the type of conversations you can have at events like this. And for me, that's one of the key reasons why everyone should support their local event, let alone something as important as Beef Week.